Chapter 50-80. That was the devil hall that coveted her man and even announced that they wanted to marry her man. She really wanted to meet him. Look at what that bastard looks like. Huang Sifu nodded and smiled as elegantly as an orchid. She pulled Yi Qing Luo's hand over and patted it gently, but this is after all the demon hall's castle, so don't be too rash, understand? Yi Qing Luo lazily pouted her pink lips. I'm following you over, so naturally I'm representing your first husband Rao's face, so I won't mess around. If it was her. Naturally, she was fearless. Anyway, the ultimate goal was to find Dmo Xian. But now, she was following Madame Huang Xi to meet the devil hole. That was Huang Sifu being forgiving. If she did something, everyone would only believe that this was done under Huang Sifu's mercy. No matter what, he couldn't cheat Madame Huang Xi. Madame Huang Xi's expression softened. She lowered her voice and said, "If there's a chance, I will help you ask for an audience with the overlord." Yi Qing Luo laughed softly. Was Madame Huang Xi trying to help her to mess up that devil hall's grand Rao's wedding ceremony? He was only going to greet the lord of the demon palace. Madame Huang Xi only brought along her personal maid Hai Yun and Yi Qing Luo. 3 people had just left their room. A servant dressed in black came forward. "Where would you like to go, Madame Huang Xi? Do you need me to accompany you?" Madame Huang Xi's expression didn't change as she spoke indifferently. "Lord Devil Hall is about to get married. This madam would like to go and greet Lord Devil Hall, as well as give him a wedding gift." She glanced at Hai Yun. Hai Yun respectfully held a tray with both hands, which was covered with a red velvet cloth. After the servant sized up the 3 of them, he had a respectful expression on his face. Recently, the demon palace lord has been busy with the wedding matters. I don't know if he has the time right now. Allow me to report to him so that Madame doesn't have to make a wasted trip. Madame Huang Xi waved her hands, indicating for him to report. After the man left, Yi Qing Luo tugged Huang Sifu's sleeve. "This place, has it always been like this?" The servant was obviously waiting at the door. The feeling he gave Yi Qing Luo was like watching them. Moreover, it restricted their freedom. She was going to inform Madame Huang Xi so that she wouldn't have to waste her time. In reality, Madame Huang Xi still needed the permission of the Devil Hall's great Rao before she could meet him. As her first husband, Madame Rao Huang Xi had to do this. Not to mention the others. This Devil Hall. Were they guarding against all the people who came to Devil Head City like wolves? The Devil region is not peaceful. It is normal for Lord Devil Hall to act this way. Huang Sifu was already used to it. If they were to come to the Devil Phoenix continent, I would also be worried. Yi Qing Luo spread out her hands. I don't really understand the concerns of the higher-ups. The 2 of them faced each other. The servant had already come over. He bowed respectfully towards the 3 of them. Lord Devil Hall happens to be free. Please follow me. Madame Huang Xi nodded slightly. The 3 of them followed the servant, turning here and there. The overall style of the castle leaned toward the dark style. But after Yi Qing Luo stepped into the guest hall, it was a completely different scene. The entire hall was magnificent, grand, and luxurious. A slender figure sat lazily on the main throne. That throne seemed to be made out of black stone, sparkling with black rays. The lady was dressed in a black feather-long dress, dragging on the ground, showing off her slender and graceful figure. The moment Yi Qing Luo entered, at first glance, she met that lady's eyes. Chapter 50-81. The lady's looks could topple a city. That kind of city toppling, cold elegance, with an arrogant nobility. Her beauty. Not like Huang Sifu's elegance. Not like Yi Qing Luo's flamboyant beauty. But a kind of exuding a noble charm which made one submit to her. Yiqing Luo congealed slightly as her long and narrow eyes raised frivolously. This devil hall was not bad looking. It wasn't a big white lotus, but a black lotus. Devil Hall Lord, long time no see. Madame Huang Xiai went forward and took a look at Hai Yun. Congratulations on Devil Hall Lord's wedding, this is a token of my appreciation. Hai Yun immediately presented the gift. The elegant and languid lady slowly straightened her slender waist. A head of jet black hair was like a waterfall, cascading down her back. It added a few more points of charm to her noble and cold elegance. Madame Huang Xiai has spent a lot of money. Her clear and melodious voice was extremely pleasant to the ears in this hall. I am already very happy that Madame is able to attend my wedding. Madame Huang Xiai laughed lightly. I didn't expect Devil Hall Lord to marry the Overlord. She pretended to be casual as she continued, the Overlord rarely steps into the Devil's domain, and it was because of you that he agreed to marry you in the Devil's domain. Devil Hall de Ren laughed softly as his brows were filled with a chilly smile. Devil Hall Lord was obviously delighted by Huang Sifu's words. She raised her hand and her soft wrist curled up as she gently brushed a poppy hairpin on her hair. I didn't expect the Overlord to be willing to marry me in the Devil's domain. Madame Huang Xiai naturally understood that obvious action, that hairpin is a gift from the Overlord. It suits Devil Hall Lord very well. The Lord of the Demon Royal Hall lowered his eyes and smiled. His noble and cold temperament became much more relaxed. He personally made it for me. Although there are some flaws, it is a token of Dizun's sincerity. I have always worn it. The Overlord and Devil Hall Decay are really affectionate. Madame Huang Xi's eyes revealed a glint of envy. This glint of envy was appropriate. After being noticed by the Devil Hall, Madame Huang Xiai lowered her eyes. This madam has always heard of the legends of Dizun, and is extremely respectful towards Dizun. I wonder if Lord Devil Hall can introduce me to him. This sentence made Yiqing Luo stunned for a moment. Naturally, she understood. Madame Huang Xiai was trying to help her. However, in this way. If she met Dmo Xian and brought Lin Mo Xian away, would this Devil Hall spare Madame Huang Xiai? Not sure if it was Yiqing Luo's misperception. She always felt that. Ever since she entered the main hall, the eyes of the demonic hall had been on her. Madame Huang Xiai pretended to be polite. When the Devil Palace was replying to Huang Sifu's words and also displaying their affection, he intentionally took a glance at her. Although his gaze was very indifferent. But he could also see that there was a hint of provocation. Yiqing Luo. Was it an illusion? Why did she feel that there were so many people deliberately targeting her in the demonic domain? That Jiang Shuang'er was. This demon hall was the same. Was it an illusion? Or, this demonic hall had already recognized her identity? Impossible. She was still in disguise as Mu Yu. Although Ji Wuhua, that fellow, looked a little unreliable. But there was absolutely no problem with his disguise. As long as she didn't use Ji Wuhua's medicine and remove the disguise. At least for half a year's time, she would be able to wear this dainty, girl-next-door face and not be discovered by anyone. Chapter 5082. She wasn't acquainted with the demonic palace. How could the demonic palace possibly detect her identity? But, the demonic palace provoked her and even intentionally flaunted their love. What was going on? Could it be? She wanted to snatch the bride. And it was spread to the ears of the demonic palace by the people in Madame's residence. Yiqing Luo felt that there was a high possibility of this. Then now, Madame Huang Xiai mentioned to introduce her to the Overlord. Perhaps it had already made the demonic palace suspicious of her. To tell the truth, when she saw the demonic palace flaunting her hairpin, Yiqing Luo's heart wasn't affected at all. Her Xian would never make hairpins or accessories for other women. She was certain of this. Moreover, her Xian was such a perfect man. There was no flaw in anything he made. Ha! This baby would not get angry over such a small matter. I'm so sorry, Madame Huang Xi. The demonic palace slowly placed her hand in front of her as she gave a cold and noble smile. The overlord is busy with the wedding with me these few days and doesn't have time to meet guests. She paused for a moment as that pair of clear beautiful eyes casually swept past Yi Qing Luo and said, "Tomorrow, Madame will still be able to meet you." Madame Huang Xi only gave a regretful smile. That's right, tomorrow is the marriage ceremony between the demonic palace and the overlord. At that time, I'll have to trouble the demonic palace to introduce you. Of course. The demonic palace smiled lightly. Madame Huang Xi's motive had not been achieved and she was about to bring Yi Qing Luo away. The demonic palace's voice suddenly rang, "This young lady. Who is she? Why have I not seen her around, madam?" The demonic palace's gaze shifted onto Yi Qing Luo as his eyes were filled with probing and judgmental, as well as some arrogance. Madame Huang Xi's words were stuck in her throat. She took a look at Yi Qing Luo and hurriedly said, "This is my accompanying doctor." She gave an ashamed smile, "My health is deteriorating day by day. Now even when I travel, I have to bring this doctor along. I've let the demonic palace laugh at me. Madame's doctor is really young." The demonic palace gave a profound smile, "But since Madame has given her all for the demon phoenix continent, you should consider your own health." Madame Huang Xi nodded her head, "Thank you for your concern, Lord Devil Hole." The Devil Palace's vision was still on Yi Qing Luo, not shifting away at all. The atmosphere was somewhat stiff. After a long time, it was so long that Madame Huang Xi was already thinking of an excuse to leave. The demonic hall finally spoke, "Recently, this demonic hall has been busy with the wedding, and my body isn't feeling well. Why don't—" Her red lips curled up and she spoke in a mysterious tone, "Madam, are you willing to part with your treasure and lend this young doctor to me for a day?" As soon as he said that, the three people in the room all stared at the Devil Hall in astonishment. Madame Huang Xi's expression froze for a moment, but very quickly, she regained her elegant and noble smile. "Lord Devil Hall, this," before he could finish. The indolent and cold woman snorted. She stood up slowly. She was wearing a long black dress with crow feathers, like black smoke fluttering in the wind. It made her look even more mysterious and enchanting. This demonic palace is just joking. Why is Madame's reaction so huge? The demonic palace covered her mouth as she laughed lightly. A pair of cold beautiful eyes were flowing with a faint cold glint. Madame really treasures this doctor. Madame Huang Xi's expression didn't have much change as she calmly met the demonic palace's gaze. "Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love." "Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love." Chapter 5083. Lord Devil Hall must be joking. Madame Huang Xi pulled Yi Qing Luo's hand. "I just can't leave Dr. Mu. The minute I heard that Lord Devil is going to leave Dr. Mu, I started to panic." She smiled faintly as if she was relieved. "Fortunately, Lord Devil Hall is only joking. Otherwise, I really don't know how to reject Lord Devil Hall." Madame Huang Xi's tone was filled with intimacy. It seemed to have shortened the distance between them. But between the two sides, there was a smile that didn't reach their eyes. This time, the demon hall did not obstruct them at all. He allowed Madame Huang Xi to pull Yi Qing Luo and the three of them left together. The servants were still waiting at the door. He only left after sending the three of them to Madame Huang Xi's courtyard. He returned to his room. Madame Huang Xi's expression turned cold. Her delicate brows furrowed slightly. "Miss Mu, Lord Demon Palace, does she know you?" It seemed like it wasn't just her imagination. That Devil Hall, it really seemed like he was targeting her. Yi Qing Luo shook her head. I can't be sure, but what I can be sure of is, I don't know her. Madame Huang Xi sat down. Her expression was solemn. In the days in Devil Head City, you have to be more careful. Lord Devil Hall seems to have a different kind of enmity towards you. She lowered her eyebrows slightly. I thought she already knew that you wanted to kidnap her at her wedding ceremony, but she didn't do anything. Tomorrow was the wedding ceremony. If the Lord Devil Hall really knew of Yi Qing Luo's motive, how could he possibly allow Yi Qing Luo to be safe and sound? Unless, that Devil Hall had already made other preparations. Madam, don't worry. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled upward slightly as her long and narrow eyes were filled with warmth. I will be careful, you don't need to worry for me. Madame Huang Xi sighed softly as she looked at Yi Qing Luo, hesitating to speak. Yi Qing Luo's eyes softened as she chuckled. You want to ask me what's the relationship between me and the Overlord, right? Madame Huang Xi hesitated for a moment before nodding her head. Although they had not known each other for long, but Madame Huang Xi still believed in her own judgment. She still believed in Yi Qing Luo. Such a proud girl had come all the way to Devil Head City just for His Majesty. She also had someone she loved deeply. Naturally, he could tell. When Mu Yu mentioned Di Zun, that pair of enchanting eyes blossomed with light. It couldn't be faked. But, today, after meeting the Demon Hall, Madame Huang Xi was still a little worried. What she was worried about was not whether Mu Yu and the Overlord had that kind of relationship. Instead, she was afraid that Mu Yu had been deceived by His Majesty. If the marriage between the Di Zun and the Devil Hall Lord was true, Di Zun also sincerely wanted to marry Lord Devil Palace Lord. Then Twilight Rain appeared at this time. It would only bring about a fatal disaster. Madame Huang Xi wanted to tell Yi Qing Luo her guess, but he didn't know how to say it. However, the girl had already curled up the corners of her lips, and her eyes were filled with a smile. There was an unwavering brilliance in her eyes. I have never doubted Xian. Because there was no doubt. There was no need to discuss whether to believe in Dmo Xian. She smiled. Tomorrow, you will understand the ins and outs of the matter. Madame Huang Xi sighed softly. As long as you have an idea in your heart, you should take note of this. I feel that Lord Devil Palace Lord has an inexplicable enmity towards you, so I'm afraid he won't take it lying down. Seventh young miss who likes trash. Lord Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh young miss who likes trash. Lord Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5084. Yi Qing Luo pacified him. I'm in the Demon Hall Castle. If anything happens, it's her responsibility. My current identity is that of your personal doctor, the kind that can't leave me. If anything happens to me in her territory, it's her problem. What's more, tomorrow is her wedding ceremony. If she wasn't stupid, she wouldn't have done such a thing at this critical juncture. That was the analysis. But the reality was, that Devil Hall wasn't someone who acted according to common sense. That night, the other party came to stir up trouble. Moreover, he did it in an above-board way. At night, Yi Qing Luo had just laid down for less than 30 minutes. With his sharp senses, he heard a sound coming from outside the door. The sound was very faint. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose slightly as she quietly flipped herself up. Under the dim light of the luminous pearl, elongated shadows were cast outside the door. There were at least a dozen of them. Io, what is he trying to do? Yi Qing Luo didn't believe that those who dared to take action in Demonic Hall Castle didn't have that Lord Demonic Hall's approval. Therefore, these people were specially sent by the Lord of the Demonic Hall to find her. Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes squinted slightly as her pink lips curled slightly, revealing a cold arc which seemed to be ridiculing and ridiculing. Then, he stretched his body. The secret technique of teleportation, she had already gone straight from her room to the room on the first floor. It was Madame Huang Xi's room. There was no sound in the room. Given Madame Huang Xi's strength, she went to her room. No matter what, he should have discovered her existence. But Madame Huang Xi did not seem to have much of a reaction. Yiqing Luo's heart sank slightly as she took quick steps towards Madame Huang Xi's direction. With the help of the faint light projected from the outside, Yiqing Luo saw Madame Huang Xi's eyes tightly shut, as though she had fallen into a deep sleep. Even if she was near, Madame Huang Xi had no reaction at all. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand and checked Madame Huang Xi's pulse. As expected, Madame Huang Xi had fainted after being drugged. Madame Huang Xi was unconscious and Hai Yun was probably the same. Looks like this was indeed the work of that demon hole. It really was a black lotus that was different from other white lotuses. He just didn't play by the rules. Upstairs, a few light footsteps were heard, but Yiqing Luo could hear it clearly. Then, the footsteps became chaotic. He's not here. Quick, find him. Then, those people started to search around the room. Obviously, everyone in the courtyard had fallen into a deep sleep. Otherwise, those people wouldn't have dared to run around the courtyard so brazenly. Yiqing Luo scoffed. The demon palace only made them fall asleep. This meant that he did not intend to take Madame Huang Xi and the rest's lives. The footsteps gradually approached Madame Huang Xi's room. Yiqing Luo speedily took out a pill and stuffed it into Madame Huang Xi's mouth. Then, he used a teleportation secret technique and quickly left the courtyard. She left very quickly. He didn't find anything. The woman, who had fallen into a deep slumber, slowly opened her eyes after the pill entered her throat. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw an afterimage flash past his eyes. A familiar aura made her completely stunned. His brain, which had been knocked out by external forces, was still a little muddled. But Madame Huang Xi endured the discomfort and sat up. Her vision looked towards the direction where Yiqing Luo had disappeared. She didn't sense wrongly. It was the aura of the teleportation secret technique. It was the teleportation secret technique. Trash 7th Young Mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th Young Mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5085. This place. Why was there a blink movement secret arts presence? Madame Huang Xi suppressed the dizziness in her head and was about to flip over. She heard messy footsteps outside the door and a voice which wasn't suppressed intentionally. Madame's room is the only one left to search, let's go in and take a look. Search? Search for what? Huang Xi's brows creased slightly as her action of flipping over stopped. She then laid back down and closed her eyes. Very quickly, a group of people rushed into the room and walked around without any scruples, as though they were searching for something. After ascertaining that there was no one else in the room, another swarm of people left the room. Huang Xi wasn't a fool. She was connecting her muddled brain with those people's actions earlier. She had more or less guessed something. She silently released her perception until she was sure that the entire courtyard had quietened down. She then slowly opened her eyes. That group of people dared to barge into her courtyard without any scruples. They must be from the demonic hall. What did they want to search for? Huang Xi pressed her slightly dizzy head as she propped herself up and headed towards Yiqing Luo's room on the second floor. On seeing that there was no one in the room, recalling the attitude of the demonic hall lord towards Yiqing Luo during the day, her expression congealed as she immediately disappeared into the darkness. The main hall of the demonic hall's castle. A lady dressed in a crow feather black dress leaned lazily on the huge obsidian throne, her posture indolent as there wasn't any emotion in her eyes. Her red lips curled into a confident and arrogant sneer, as though she had long controlled everything in the palm of her hands. When Yiqing Luo neared the main hall, she saw such a scene. She hid in the shadows, concealing her presence very well. Suddenly, a bell-like laughter reverberated in the hall. "Overlord, do you really bear to hand her over to me?" When she heard the two words, Overlord, Yiqing Luo's heart jumped. Overlord? Ah, Xian was here too. Then, who was the she that the demonic hall was referring to? That laughter wrapped around Yiqing Luo in strands. After a while, in the cold and spacious hall, a familiar voice with a tinge of indifference and coldness rang out, drowning out the woman's laughter. "If I can't bear to, what will you do?" Yiqing Luo's heart thumped hard. It was Ah Xian's voice. It was definitely Ah Xian's voice. Is he really here? Moreover, he was together with the devil hole. In the middle of the night, a man and a woman. Was he getting bolder? Yiqing Luo's little fists clenched tightly, restraining the urge to rush out. The demon sovereign laughed charmingly. Dizun is really heartless. If you can't bear to do it, I will be jealous, she laughed and laughed, drawing out the last syllable. Soon after, he suddenly paused, and his voice seemed to be wrapped in a layer of frost. When this prince gets jealous, someone will pay the price. Ha! That cold and thin voice snorted. Then, he indifferently spat out two words, up to you. Soon after, a gust of wind blew past. TSK, what a boring man, but I love him so much. She sighed softly. Yiqing Luo stood silently in the dark, as her expression faintly revealed some treacherous emotions. That voice, it was indeed Ah Xian's. No matter if it was the voice or intonation, or the way he spoke. Indeed, it was Ah Xian. But, she didn't believe it. She understood the meaning behind the devil hole's words. The she in the devil hole's words was probably referring to her. If it was really Ah Xian, why would Ah Xian say the words, up to you, allowing the devil hole to do anything to her? Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5086. After experiencing several fake Ah Xian incidents, plus Yiqing Luo's absolute trust towards DMO Xian. Although Yiqing Luo felt a little upset in her heart, but there was more suspicion than anger. Yiqing Luo wasn't sure what this demonic palace was trying to do. To make a move on a distinguished guest who came to attend the wedding ceremony on their own turf. If this got out of hand, then the wedding would be hard to arrange. She was pondering over it. Suddenly footsteps were heard outside the door. Following that, a group of people hurriedly ran over. Lord Demonic Palace, there's no sign of that young lady in the room. I've searched the entire courtyard but there's no trace of that young lady. Demonic Palace's exquisite brows rose as she gave a cold smile. She's rather quick-witted to be able to guess my plan. Yiqing Luo. No, she couldn't guess it. It was just that her physique was special and couldn't be bewitched. Plus her senses had always been sharp. Especially with the blink movement's secret arts. So she barely avoided Demonic Palace's plan. She really didn't expect that Demonic Palace dared to make a move on her own turf. But this also showed one point. In Demonic Palace's eyes, she actually didn't care about the other 3 continents' authoritative figures. Or rather, her ambition was no longer just the so-called Lord Demonic Palace. In the Devil region, the 3 continents each had their own authoritative figures. For example, Demon Phoenix Continent's Madame Huang Ci. And demonic palace was the overall authoritative figure of the three continents. Their motive was to restrain the balance of the three continents. This demonic palace didn't seem to be worried that Madame Huang Xi would find trouble with her. So what if she ran away? As long as she's still in Devil Head City, she won't be able to escape from my grasp. Demonic Palace gave a charming smile as her tone turned cold. On account that tomorrow is my wedding day, I'll be merciful and let her off. Demonic Palace paused as the glint in her eyes deepened as her red lips curled into an evil cold arc. Speaking of this, rather than killing her now, why not let her witness with her own eyes the marriage between me and the Overlord? That scene should be more exciting. As though she had already imagined this scene in her mind. The Demon Queen laughed loudly. Her crow-feathered black dress fluttered with her laughter like ripples, making her look even colder and more elegant like a plum blossom. All of you can leave. She gave the order. A group of men and horses quickly disappeared into the darkness. The Devil Palace slowly stood up. Her dress fluttered in the wind like black butterfly wings, dreamy and beautiful. Yi Qing Luo stayed in the dark. They stayed there for a long time. Even if the demonic hall had already left for half an hour. She did not move either. In his mind, the scene of the conversation between the demon hall and that familiar and cold voice suddenly appeared. It was a voice that was so familiar that it penetrated deep into his bones. It was so familiar that she couldn't tell whether it was fake or not. The words of the demon hall had already made it very clear. She knew who she was. He knew about her relationship with DMO Xian. That was why they were targeting her. However, how did the Devil Hall know about this? She was currently using the identity of Twilight Rain. Everything related to Yi Qing Luo had been sealed. Today, even Old Man Tsang and her war pet, as well as the vast water god weapon etc., were all unusable. And to such a stage. How could the Devil Hall recognize her? Most importantly, she and this so-called Devil Hall were totally not familiar with each other. How did the Devil Hall know about her relationship with DMO Xian? Or did they know about her identity? This question could only wait till tomorrow's wedding ceremony. To find out the answer. Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss Who Likes Trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5087. It was totally unrealistic to search for DMO Xian in the demonic palace castle now. Not to mention that she wasn't familiar with the layout of the demonic palace castle. Even if she was, there was no way she could roam around the demonic palace castle. Tomorrow, she would always be able to see DMO Xian at the wedding ceremony. By then, she would know the reason. Yi Qing Luo squinted her long and narrow eyes as she displayed her blink movement secret art and disappeared from the castle's main hall. She had just returned to Madame Huang Xi's courtyard. She just stepped in. Her wrist tightened. In the darkness, Madame Huang Xi's hand grabbed her arm tightly. Are you all right? Her eyes were filled with worry as she sized Yi Qing Luo up. You're awake. Yi Qing Luo smiled at her and pulled her back into the house. I'm fine, don't worry. What happened? Madame Huang Xi frowned. Her expression was extremely ugly. After the both of them sat on the chair, Yi Qing Luo took Madame Huang Xi's pulse as she replied, the demonic palace indeed knows the reason why I came to Devil Head City. Madame Huang Xi's pulse was very stable. The things that demonic palace planted didn't have much of an effect on Madame Huang Xi. Yi Qing Luo was relieved. Based on Madame Huang Xi's current body, she really couldn't take on other kinds of poison. Madame Huang Xi allowed Yi Qing Luo to take her pulse as her thoughts were fixed on Yi Qing Luo's words. Her expression suddenly sunk, then. Demonic palace wants to capture you. In case you spoil her wedding. Initially, he might have thought so. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers propped up her chin as her slightly curved eyes were filled with a cold glint, but not necessarily. That demonic palace wasn't someone who acted according to common sense. Demonic palace's target was her. It might not be because he was worried that she would spoil the wedding. Or possibly, he wanted to torture her. Why not? Why not you go and hide first? When I see the overlord, I'll help you pass on a message. Madame Huang Xi revealed a worried expression. That demonic palace's way of doing things. Extremely unreasonable. No one could guess what she was thinking. If demonic palace set his eyes on evening rain, then. If twilight rain continued to stay in the demon hall castle, it would instead attract a fatal disaster. Yiqing Luo held Madame Huang Xi's hand gently as her long and narrow eyes were filled with a cold glint. I came to Devil Head City to wreck the wedding ceremony's venue, how could I possibly dodge? She softened her expression and smiled again. Moreover, in the eyes of the Devil Hall, we are in the same group. Do you think, if I hide, she will give you the chance to meet the sovereign alone? Moreover, it was still uncertain whether that person was a venerable sovereign. Yiqing Luo didn't believe it. Her Xian would appear at the wedding ceremony of another woman. He looked at Madame Huang Xi's worried face. Yiqing Luo comforted him, don't worry, I know how to protect myself. Seeing her insistence, Madame Huang Xi could only sigh lightly, don't force yourself. Yiqing Luo smiled and brought the topic back to the matter which she was suspicious of previously. The Devil Hall actually dared to act against her, the person protected by Madame Huang Xi, in the Devil Hall castle. He even poisoned Madame Huang Xi, causing her to fall into a deep sleep. This action. It was totally provoking the Devil Phoenix continent. Madame Huang Xi's eyelids drooped slightly. That exquisite face was covered with a layer of faint melancholy. She pursed her lips slightly and sighed softly, actually. There were signs of this long ago. Seventh Miss who likes trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Seventh Miss who likes trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5088. As the lord of a continent, no matter how unwell she was, she would still be in control of most matters in the Devil region. A leader would absolutely not allow anything to be out of her control. Initially, the Devil region's 3 continents were in balance. Devil Head City was located in the center of the 3 continents, with Devil Hall as the leader. This was considered stable. But no one knew when it started. Over at Devil Hall's side, there were some changes. Unknowingly, all the powerhouses in the 3 continents were leaning towards Devil Hall. The powers of the 3 continents were well aware of this, but they couldn't point it out, so they could only investigate and counterattack in the dark. Following that, Devil Hall directly took away part of the authority in their hands. All the way till now. Huang Sifu's drooping brows were cold and gloomy. I always feel that this marriage ceremony is not a simple marriage. Yiqing Luo agreed with this point. Devil Hall's actions tonight. They totally didn't consider if it would affect her marriage tomorrow. Even if Devil Hall's status was above the 3 continents' powers. But if Madame Huang Xi were to create a ruckus because of her being caught. No matter what, it would affect the marriage ceremony. Moreover, earlier. In Devil Hall's main hall. Devil Hall An. DMO Xian's conversation. Yiqing Luo didn't feel that Devil Hall liked DMO Xian at all. This matter. There must be a problem. Rest early, tomorrow we will know. What is that Devil Hall planning? Yiqing Luo patted Huang Xifu's shoulder, rest enough before you have the energy. The next day. It was still not daybreak. The entire Devil Head City was a scene of jubilation. This liveliness continued till morning. Yiqing Luo and Madame Huang Xi had their meal and were led by Devil Hall's attendants to the wedding ceremony venue. Along the way, Devil Hall's surroundings were totally different from when they came. Devil Hall's castle was decorated with lanterns and streamers, red silk hung everywhere. Big red, double happiness words were pasted on every wall and door. Yi Ching Luo and the rest followed the attendant out of Devil Hall's castle, and under the attendant's instructions, they boarded a magic ship. On top of the magic ship, there were already 5 to 6 people who were of high status and authority. When they saw Madame Huang Xiai, they all stood up to greet her. Madame Huang Xiai politely returned the greeting. Then, after exchanging a few pleasantries, they each took their own seats. The Demon Palace had set the wedding to be held at the largest square in Devil Head City. Under the recent management of the square, it was grand and luxurious, fully displaying the style of the Devil Hall. Countless citizens of the demon domain had gathered around and were watching with their heads raised. Their words were filled with joy for the marriage of the Demon Hall. They were even discussing the love story between the sovereign and the Demon Palace. His imagination was so good that he could write a 5 million-word novel. After the demonic ship arrived, beautiful maids came forward and led the people on the demonic ship to their seats. Yi Ching Luo had been looking around the entire way. The people of the infernal region looked no different from humans. The only difference was, regardless of whether they were men or women, young or old, they all wore thick eyeliner and had 4 sharp teeth in their mouths. Madame Huang Xiai was the ruler of a continent. His position was naturally very close to the front. It was the second row away from Xinrao. After Yi Ching Luo sat down, she sized up the people around her. Numerous strong practitioners from the infernal region were all invited over, as their faces were filled with smiles as they chatted with the people around them. Madame Huang Xiai could roughly tell that Yi Ching Luo didn't know much about the matters of the infernal region. Chapter 5089. Occasionally he would lower his voice to explain to her the surrounding identities. The two of them were whispering something. The seat beside Yi Ching Luo was occupied by someone. Yi Ching Luo subconsciously looked over. He saw a man in a moon-white robe leaning lazily against the back of the chair in the distance of a pedestrian passageway. What made Yi Ching Luo astonished was that man's hair was silver in color. It was obviously the symbol of the purest white robe and white hair man, but he had a captivating face. That face was extraordinarily handsome, bewitching and bewitching. Especially that pair of long and narrow, curved phoenix eyes, which carried a charm. When it was slightly raised, it hooked into a wavy arc. Unfortunately, such an evildoer's temperament, under the white robe and white hair, was totally compatible. Good looks really could handle any style. Every table here represented a powerhouse. Every table's fingertip was separated by a distance of a pedestrian walkway. Perhaps it was because Yi Ching Luo's gaze was too scorching, without any concealment. That lazy and contented man suddenly raised his eyes, meeting Yi Ching Luo's gaze, as he looked over. Just like that, their eyes met. Yi Ching Luo could feel her own heart constricting for a moment. He really was an evildoer. This face, this temperament. If it was any other lady, they would probably drown under his charm. The man was apparently curious. After their eyes met, the young lady actually continued to look at him without any change in expression. And there wasn't any shyness or any ripples in her emotions. The man's brows rose slightly, as he sized up the young lady with interest. Dr. Mu. Madame Huang Xiai tugged Yi Ching Luo's hand hard. Yi Ching Luo's gaze shifted away, as she looked towards Madame Huang Xiai. Huang Xiai Fu's expression wasn't too good, as he suppressed his voice, that his devil wings countenance King Yi Zhou. She looked at the man's gaze towards Yi Ching Luo, as her expression sunk, as she continued, I heard that he hates women, especially women, staring at his looks. There are rumors outside that he might be a Madame Huang Xi raised her arm as she pulled down her wide sleeves. Cut off the sleeve. Yiqing Luo raised her brows and glanced sideways at the man with interest, which was in the direction of Wing King Yizhou. Then, she retracted her gaze. TSK, such a good-looking man, but he's gay, what a pity. Yiqing Luo whispered. Suddenly, a low and flirtatious voice came from behind him, like a peach blossom caressing his face. You, keep staring at this prince, what is your intention? It was unknown when Yizhou had walked to Yiqing Luo's side. A clear and serene male scent of green bamboo seeped into his nose. Yiqing Luo had just turned back. She was met with an enlarged version of a handsome face that was right in front of her. Wing Nine bent down and looked down at the girl in front of him. Her face had the facial features of a cute girl next door. She could barely be considered elegant and pleasant. But, those eyes. It made people want to look into the abyss in her eyes and sink into it. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes as she looked at this close proximity, that charming face, as she opened her mouth. Can you stay further away from me? This distance, wasn't it a little too close? There were already quite a number of strong practitioners from the devil's domain looking over. Where was the disgusting woman? What was he doing standing so close to her? King Yi. When Madame Huang Xi saw this, she immediately stood up and called out. Chapter 5090. She raised her hand and used her wide sleeves to block Yiqing Luo's and Yi Wang's eyes. Yi Wang then shifted his gaze away. Madame Huang Xi's face sunk. Yi Wang, this is Dr. Rao. Yi Wang straightened his body lazily and sat down on the chair next to Yiqing Luo naturally. I didn't do anything, why is Madame so agitated? Huang Xi Fu replied indifferently, Wang Xi is not here. I and Madame haven't met for a long time, Madame can bear to chase me away. Yi Wang casually glanced at Madame Huang Xi and poured himself a cup of tea. Anyway, I came here alone, why don't I have a companion? Huang Xi Fu's face turned gloomy. She frowned. Yi Wang, Dr. Mu only took a few more glances at you because you are too good-looking. She is my Dr. Rao. If Yi Wang is angry, feel free to come to me. Yi Wang didn't seem to hear the impatience and coldness in Madame Huang Xi's words. Instead, his long and narrow phoenix eyes curved into an arc as he turned to Yiqing Luo and asked with a smile, Miss Mu really think I am handsome? Huang Xi Fu's face turned black. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes. Looking at Yi Wang's smiling face, which looked even more like a beauty that could bring calamity to the country. She blinked her eyes again. This was a dead question. Based on Madame Huang Xi's image of Yi Wang. He hated other women to look at him. Maybe he felt that his face was a burden. So he couldn't admit it. But if he denied it, it would probably annoy Yi Wang. Yiqing Luo expressed that this question was hard to answer. So she asked back, then Yi Wang think. You look good. Good. Yi Wang didn't hesitate as his slender fingers touched his chin and the ends of his eyes lifted. Yiqing Luo felt that he was purposely exuding his male hormones. This Yi Wang was probably a stuffy horse flea. Yiqing Luo smiled and smiled again. Good looking. The King of Wings tilted his head, and his long silver hair cascaded down his shoulders. However, I feel that your answer is completely insincere, as if you were just brushing me off. Yiqing Luo. So she thought this was a suicide question. Yi King. Madame Huang Xi frowned. Madame is fine. Yiqing Luo held on to Madame Huang Xi, curled her lips and shook her head. Up until now, she had not sensed any malicious intent from the Wing King. According to her analysis, this was probably the first time Yi Wang had met a young lady like her. After seeing his beautiful face, she was still able to remain clear-headed under his seductive charm. Therefore, he was a little interested. Yi Qing Luo expressed, what kind of peerless beauty had she not seen before? She had already devoured all the top beauties in the world, including her Xian. No matter how beautiful Yi Wang was, Wang couldn't do anything about it. Her heart wasn't moved at all, okay? And there was movement over here. Many of the guests around them were shocked. Those who could attend the wedding ceremony were either rich or noble. Who didn't know that the Devil Wing Continent's King Yi was a person who detested women? But now, the Devil Wing Continent's King Yi was actually sitting on Huang Xi Fu Rao's seat, and was even chatting cheerfully with a young lady. And they were so close. Could it be? The Devil Wing Continent and the Devil Phoenix Continent were going to unite by marriage. This thought instantly caused an uproar among the guests. All of them expressed their disbelief. Chapter 5091. He listened to the millions of words that the people around him once again filled in the gaps in their minds. Yi Qing Luo was speechless. She didn't expect these people from the Devil region to have such a strong imagination. But Yi Qing Luo didn't reject Yi Wang sitting beside her. He chatted back and forth with the King of Wings. On the other hand, Madame Huang Xi's eyes were filled with worry and vigilance as she stared at Yi Wang. There were more and more guests around. The scene of the wedding ceremony was getting more and more lively. King Yi's eyes were filled with interest as he stared at Yi Qing Luo, the corners of his eyes raised as he smiled. The first time this duke saw Miss Mu, I was already filled with joy. I wonder if Miss Mu is willing to follow this duke back to the Devil Wings Continent, to be this duke's princess. Yi Qing Luo. Madame Huang Xi was drinking tea when her hand shook and the teacup fell onto the rain. Yi Wang's words had shocked the both of them. On the contrary, Yi Wang didn't feel that his words had much influence on them. He was still smiling as he deliberately exuded his charm. What do you think, Miss Mu? Yi Qing Luo placed the teacup on the table and fixed her gaze on Yi Wang. Yi Wang allowed her to size him up. Yi Qing Luo stared for a while and was extremely calm. You like me? Yi Wang leaned forward slightly and closed the distance between him and Yi Qing Luo. His long and narrow phoenix eyes curved into crescents as he smiled. I find you very interesting. I just find it interesting, not to the extent of liking. On what basis do you want to marry me? Yi Qing Luo rejected him directly. After you find me boring, won't you abandon me? Ha ha ha. Yi Wang laughed softly as his silver hair swayed in front of his chest. Miss Mu is indeed straightforward, making me fall in love with you. Yi Qing Luo was expressionless. I forgot to tell Yi Wang something. Ha. Yi Wang raised his brows with interest. Yi Qing Luo smiled slightly. I am already married. Yi Wang's eyes widened slightly as he was somewhat surprised. But immediately after, he laughed in a low voice. So what? He casually picked up the teapot and filled the young lady's teacup before bringing the tea to Yi Qing Luo's lips. That green bamboo-like fragrance assaulted her senses. He approached her and chuckled. Even if we are married, if this king likes you, you can only be this king's. As he spoke, he handed the teacup over. Yi Qing Luo was about to raise her hand to block Yi Wang. However, he felt a chill run down his spine. It was just a short pause. The teacup in Yi Wang's hand was already at her lips. Yi Qing Luo raised her hand and held the teacup as she looked towards the direction of that chilling intent. The seats were full of guests, but she didn't see that familiar yet bone-chilling aura. She didn't know where it came from. That chill. Someone must be watching her. Wing King, please behave yourself. Madame Huang Xi waved her hand and separated the distance between Yi Qing Luo and Yi Wang, then pulled her behind her. No matter what motive you have, Dr. Mu is not someone you can play with. The corners of King Yi's lips curled upwards. She lowered her gaze and focused on her own hand. That was the hand that the girl had grabbed just now. She snatched the cup from his hand and let go of him. However, he still felt that the touch of her hand was still faintly lingering. Yi Wang lifted his eyes slightly, his narrow phoenix eyes revealed some unknown glint. He looked at Madame Huang Xi and smiled faintly. Perhaps, this king does not intend to play with her. Then I will still reject. This sentence was Yi Qingluo's reply. Chapter 5092. While smashing, 5, the title is wrong. Yi Qingluo placed the teacup on the table. I am already married and I love my husband very much, so it's not your turn to please me. Wing 9, who had been completely rejected, smiled even more brightly. He shifted his body and slumped back onto the chair as his gaze casually looked towards Yi Qingluo's direction, squinting in that direction, and with an unclear meaning, his thin lips curled upwards. I didn't expect Miss Mu to have so many pursuers. Yi Qingluo. What did he mean? Yi Jiu didn't have the intention to explain to her as he sat by the side and poured himself a cup of tea. Then he stared ahead at the stage where the newlyweds were going to bow to heaven and earth. It wasn't the auspicious hour yet. The two newlyweds hadn't come out yet. Yi Qingluo didn't talk to Yi Jiu anymore. Madame Huang Xi held Yi Qingluo's hand and asked in a low voice, "You are really married?" Yi Qingluo smiled and nodded. Madame Huang Xi looked towards the stage and coughed lightly. Could it be the overlord? Yi Qingluo raised her brows and smiled mysteriously. This. I'm not sure. Maybe her husband was really the groom today. Or maybe not. Madame Huang Xi was stunned. Yes means yes, no means no. What did she mean by not sure? She couldn't even say for sure who her husband was. Madame Huang Xi felt that the marriage mentioned by Mu Yu was just an excuse to reject Yi Jiu. As she spoke, the festive gongs and drums sounded. Accompanied by the wedding matron's joyous voice, the auspicious hour has arrived, may the bride and groom please come to the stage. At that moment, the entire wedding ceremony was filled with deafening applause and congratulations. Yi Qingluo's long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly. Then she raised her eyes and followed the gaze of these people to the flower carpet that extended to the door. Dr. Mu. Madame Huang Xi held Yi Qingluo's hand tightly and whispered worriedly. Worried that she wouldn't be able to bear it. Yi Qingluo's lips curled but didn't respond. Her gaze was fixed on the door without blinking. Two figures slowly appeared and stepped onto the carpet of flowers on the ground. The woman wore a phoenix crown and red robe and her face was as red as fire. The man was dressed in a bright red wedding robe and was extraordinarily handsome. When the two of them appeared in front of everyone, thunderous applause erupted from the crowd. Tight and loose, the petals spread. The bride and groom held a red ribbon in their hands and walked step by step towards the stage. Everywhere he went, there were words of congratulations. Yi Qingluo's vision congealed on that pair of newlyweds, not even blinking once, not even blinking once. The man was handsome and elegant, but his face was expressionless at this moment. There was not the slightest bit of joy on his face. That face. Chapter 5093. The bride and groom were standing in the middle of the stage, facing the guests. The matchmaker was still speaking joyous words. Madame Huang Xi stood beside Yi Qingluo and naturally saw the groom's gaze when he stopped in his tracks and looked at Yi Qingluo. Her heart thumped as she gripped Yi Qingluo's wrist tightly and asked in a low voice, "Between you and the overlord, is it really?" Earlier, the groom had obviously taken a look at Mu Yu. That slightly startled expression seemed to hide endless words. Seems. Yes. The young lady's expression didn't change much as she casually retracted her gaze from the pair of newlyweds and looked at Madame Huang Xi with a sweet smile. looking at him wearing this wedding robe. I'm a little stunned. Madame Huang Xi's heart was pounding. She couldn't tell if the young lady was suppressing the pain in her heart or if she really didn't care. She deliberated over her words before saying, could it be that he has some difficulties? Or, I'll find a chance to let the both of you have a private talk. Yiqing Luo thought about it seriously as she tilted her head slightly and smiled. No need, he will naturally come and look for me. At this moment, Madame Huang Xi really couldn't understand what the young lady in front of her was thinking about. She could tell. Mu Yu's feelings for the overlord was so deep. She came all the way to the devil's domain just to look for the overlord. But she witnessed the scene of the man she loved deeply marrying another lady with her own eyes. If it had been her, she would have been shocked. She might break down. But unfortunately, the young lady in front of her had a calm expression and her pink lips were still slightly curled up. Madame Huang Xi was really worried if Mu Yu would suffocate herself to death. TSK. Seems like there's a good show to watch. A frivolous voice rang from the side. Yi Jiu propped up his head as he looked at Yiqing Luo with a smile. Miss Mu, your marriage partner, don't tell me. Today's groom. Earlier when the groom stopped in his tracks and exchanged glances with the young lady, although it wasn't obvious, but those who had been paying attention to Yiqing Luo were still able to sense it. Yiqing Luo glanced sideways as her long and narrow eyes flowed with a sly smile, then. If I want to ruin today's marriage ceremony, will Duke Yi help me? The girl's tone was soft, but her words were very bold and arrogant. There wasn't much emotion in her eyes as she slowly sat back down. Yi Wang stared straight at Yiqing Luo, as though he wanted to see through her, straight into her soul. What? Yi Wang doesn't dare anymore. Yiqing Luo smiled wickedly. Nine Wing's tone was filled with an ambiguous sense of ridicule as he raised his eyebrows and looked at Yiqing Luo. Miss Mu, what's the use of having a man who abandoned you? Why don't you become my princess? That way, he will be angered to death. Yiqing Luo laughed softly. Yi Wang's idea sounds pretty good. That's right, so. What's Miss Mu's answer? Yi Wang suddenly straightened his body as that handsome face leaned towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Between her brows, there was a devilish charm. Unfortunately. I'm not interested in you, Yi Wang. The young lady spat out her words indifferently as she rejected him in a straightforward manner. What's more, I have nothing to do with today's groom. Yi Wang, don't ruin my reputation, in case the Lord Devil Hall comes looking for me to settle the score. Yi Wang gave a faint "oh," as he replied with a smile that didn't look like a smile. Nothing to do with you. But I feel that your relationship is not shallow. Chapter 5094. What you think is your problem, it has nothing to do with me. Yiqing Luo's smile faded as she raised her slender hand and pushed him back to his seat. Following that, she shifted her vision towards the center of the stage. The newlyweds were standing there, going through all kinds of wedding procedures. Looking at the groom, holding the red silk and bowing to the wedding matron's joyous voice. Yiqing Luo expressed, there was no fluctuation in her heart, she even felt like laughing. That groom was indeed Dmo Xian's face. His every action was filled with Dmo Xian's shadow. But, it wasn't Dmo Xian. Yiqing Luo didn't know how to describe this feeling. Anyway, it was just the first look and she was already certain, he wasn't Xian. Even if this groom looked like Dmo Xian. Even if he revealed an expression when he saw her. She was certain, this person was absolutely not Dmo Xian. Perhaps, this kind of stubborn thinking, in the eyes of outsiders, might be seen as self-deception. Yiqing Luo gave a low laugh as she lowered her eyes to look at the profound phoenix ring on her fingertips. To conceal her identity, it had covered the original glow, making it look extremely dim. There was no fluctuation in the profound phoenix ring. Her fingertips gently caressed the profound phoenix ring as her mind was filled with thoughts. If the groom in front of her wasn't Dmo Xian, then what was the intention of the demonic palace? This was also clear. The demonic palace knew that Dmo Xian was in the devil's domain. Most importantly, earlier the groom looked at her. What did it mean? Her current identity was Sunset Rain. Yiqing Luo's mind was sketching out the development of the matter, attempting to deduce the demonic palace's motive. And the way she lowered her eyes in deep thoughts. In Huang Sifu's eyes, it meant that she was in low spirits and not in a good mood. He didn't want to disturb her, so he could only look at her with heartache. Just as she was thinking. The procedures had ended. It was time for the couple to toast. Yiqing Luo's elbow was knocked. From the side of his eyes met the bride's exquisitely made-up, cold and elegant face. Not knowing when, the demonic palace had already removed the red veil, pulling the groom to stand in front of her. The demon royal highness held a wine cup in her hand. A lazy smile appeared on her cold, picturesque eyes. Last night, didn't Madam want me to introduce you to the sovereign? I've brought Dizun here for you. Madam Huang Xi stood up and raised her wine cup. There was no smile on her face. Congratulations to Lord Demon Hall for getting married to Lord Dizun. She was about to finish the wine in one gulp. A white hand pressed down on her hand. Madam is currently recuperating and isn't suitable to drink alcohol. This cup of wine. If Sir Demon Lord doesn't mind, I'll drink it on her behalf. Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled upwards as she smiled sweetly at Demon Lord. Devil Palace's brows shot towards Yiqing Luo as that pair of beautiful eyes bore an undetectable cold intent. After that, he said, Madam, you still have to protect the demon phoenix continent. Your health is more important, it's fine. Yiqing Luo's fingertips flicked as she took the wine cup from Madame Huang Xi's hands. After finishing it in one gulp, she smiled, it's a marriage, as long as you're happy. Congratulations to the both of you. Devil Palace didn't have the intention to head to the next table to toast. Instead, he held on to the groom's arm. Dizun heard that a divine doctor had appeared by Madame's side and had always wanted to meet you. Although I'm not too willing to let Dizun befriend such a beautiful lady like Dr. Mu, but I can't reject Dizun's request. Chapter 5095. The bridegroom's handsome face immediately darkened a little. His black eyes, which were as deep as ink, swept across the demon hall coldly. As though he was warning something. As though he was suppressing his anger because of Demon Palace's words. Demon Palace's smile was even more enchanting. Her cold beautiful eyes were cold. See, didn't I let you meet each other? Her words seemed to have a deeper meaning. Or as though it was because the groom wanted to befriend this divine doctor. As the bride, she unconditionally fulfilled her husband's wish. The groom held the wine glass as he stared deeply at Yiqing Luo. The raging waves in his eyes seemed to want to drown her. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. Yiqing Luo didn't seem to see his rich expression as she smiled sweetly. Since Demon Palace doesn't allow it, then there's no need to get to know each other. She raised her wine glass and clinked it against the groom's glass. Anyway, I will only be by Madame's side and be her exclusive doctor. Other people's illnesses have nothing to do with me. After that, she raised her wine glass and drank it in one gulp. Her smile was flawless. Congratulations, groom. The groom looked at the wine glass in his hand as his throat rolled. That familiar low hoarse voice, indeed, it was very similar. Even that tone seemed to be replicated. But there was only that one word. Demon Palace took a look at him. In the end, he swallowed the words that were stuck in his throat and silently drained the cup of wine. Demon Palace looked at Madame Huang Xi with envy. This doctor Madame has found is really enviable. Madame Huang Xi's lips twitched as she forced a smile. now that Demon Palace is married to the Overlord, based on the Overlord's great ability, he will definitely not let you need a doctor. Demon Palace gave another enchanting smile. Then she held the groom's arm and went to the other tables to toast. This side finally quietened down. Looking at the young lady's calm look, Madame Huang Xi's heart ached more and more. Yi Jiu opened his mouth and said lazily, Demon Palace obviously dragged her groom to you, don't tell me. Demon Palace already knew that you are here to snatch the bride. It looks like he knows. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she smiled. Aren't you afraid that the Devil Hall would think that we're in cahoots by sitting together with me? If you become this king's consort, this king will naturally be on your side. Yi Jiu once again brought up this matter. Yi Qing Luo maintained her smile. King Yi is really persistent. Maybe if you're a little more persistent, you'll be able to win the heart of the beauty. Wing Nine's smile remained unchanged. Yi Qing Luo snorted coldly, it still lit up. Wing Nine, huh? It's not time to dream yet. Yi Qing Luo was expressionless. Yi Jiu was stunned for a moment before he laughed out loud. That smile could only be described as amorous and flirtatious. It was demonic to the extreme. When Madame Huang Xi saw the conversation between the two of them, she wanted to stop Yi Jiu, but she suddenly stopped. The current sunset rain was probably feeling terrible in her heart. With Yi Wang accompanying her like this, perhaps it could divert his attention. Madame Huang Xi let out a long sigh. Suddenly, they keenly sensed that there were several pairs of eyes looking in their direction. When Madame Huang Xi looked over, she saw that although Demon Palace and the groom were toasting, their gazes were always looking in their direction. Especially when she saw Sunset Rain and Yi Wang chatting happily, she even whispered something. Chapter 5096. Madame Huang Xi's heart was suddenly in her throat. The Demon Lord and the Overlord. It seemed that the attention they paid to Evening Rain was unusual. Was it because they were worried that Evening Rain would cause trouble and kidnap the bride? Madame Huang Xi suppressed her thoughts and refocused her attention on the ceremony. It took at least an hour for the toasts to be completed. When the couple returned to the stage, they were already a little tipsy. The Demon Lord leaned on the groom's shoulder, his little hand hooked his arm, but his cold face was hooked into a smile. The groom was still expressionless, letting the Demon Lord do whatever he wanted. The matchmaker said a few more words. After that, the guests were allowed to eat and drink as they liked. Miss Mu. Yi Jiu suddenly lowered his voice and gave her a bright smile. Do you want to know who is the person who has been staring at you from behind? Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. You found him. From the moment she and Yi Jiu started talking, she kept feeling a cold gaze directed at her. That frosty gaze, but she couldn't catch it at all. Whether he was a friend or foe, she didn't know. Yi Qing Luo felt that since she came to the devil's domain, she felt that she was on the verge of losing her horse. Like everyone had a grudge against her. She also wanted to know who was the person who had been staring at her coldly. Listening to Yi Qing Luo's inquiry, Yi Jiu shook his head with a smile. No. Yi Qing Luo. What the hell are you talking about? But, I have an idea. Yi Jiu's long and narrow phoenix eyes twitched. Do you want to try? Yi Qing Luo didn't reply. Madame Huang Xi continued, if there is an idea, why don't we try? It's better than them hiding in the dark while we are out in the open. Madame Huang Xi's action was to divert Yi Qing Luo's attention, so that she wouldn't be affected by the marriage between the Demon Lord and the Overlord. What's more, indeed, if there was someone staring at Evening Rain in the dark, it would be safer to put them out in the open. Yi Jiu raised his brows, his slender fingers stroked his chin. I have observed for a while, once I get close to you, that gaze will move over. So, I guess He paused mysteriously and said, "Come out with me." Yi Qing Luo sized him up suspiciously. "What do you want to do?" "You are Madame's person, this duke wouldn't dare to do anything bad." Yi Jiu grabbed Yi Qing Luo's wrist through her sleeves and pulled her out of the crowd. It was a boiling cauldron of voices and the seats were full of guests. Their actions did not attract the attention of too many people. However, the pair of newlyweds on the stage could see it clearly. There was a momentary change in the expression on the groom's handsome face. His deep eyes stared straight at the departing figures of Yi Qing Luo and Yi Jiu. After a while, he lowered his eyes. "I'm going to sober up." The demon royal hall smiled mysteriously and pretended to be considerate. "Go." Madame Huang Xi's beautiful eyes were filled with worry and she wanted to catch up. But the moment he stood up, the demon hall glanced in a certain direction. Soon, people from other continents came up to chat. In the blink of an eye, Yi Jiu and Yi Qing Luo's figures had already disappeared before their eyes. The entire square was contracted by the demon royal hall. Walking out of the wedding stage, the periphery was decorated with flowers like a brocade, the atmosphere was joyous, luxurious, and noble. Until they walked out of the crowd, Yi Qing Luo shook off Yi Jiu. "Is this enough?" Yi Jiu raised his brows and looked around. Chapter 5097. Everyone had gathered at the scene of the wedding ceremony to watch the ceremony. Among the flowers, there was no one else to be seen. Yi Jiu's long and narrow phoenix eyes were flowing with a few rays of bright light, extremely evil. His thin lips curled and suddenly reached out and pressed on Yi Qing Luo's shoulder. Immediately, his figure leaned forward. That devilishly handsome face was magnified in Yi Qing Luo's pupils. Yi Qing Luo was stunned for a moment. She didn't quite understand the intention of Yi Jiu's action. But she didn't show too much panic on her face, just raised her hand to block Yi Jiu's chest, blocking him from getting close. It was also at this moment. Yi Qing Luo's wrist was pulled by a huge force. With a little force, she staggered back a few steps and almost fell to the ground. Just as she was about to turn her head to look, Yi Jiu suddenly grabbed her arm hard and pulled her towards him. Yi Qing Luo, each of them pulled one arm. Was this a tug of war? "Your Majesty, today is your big day. You came here, and pulled my future wife. Isn't that a little inappropriate?" Yi Jiu spat out a voice laced with evil laughter. He smiled with his phoenix eyes, looking behind Yi Qing Luo with a faint smile. "Overlord." Yi Qing Luo raised her eyebrows slightly. She glanced sideways, and sure enough, her eyes met that peerless face. And that pair of eyes that seemed to be full of infinite affection, as deep as ink. He held her wrist tightly, a little strong, as if he was holding back some emotions. Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly. Immediately, her pink lips raised into a faint smile. "Groom, what do you mean?" She looked down at her wrist. The groom tightly pursed his thin lips, his eyes were surging with stormy waves. He held Yi Qing Luo's hand and refused to let go. Yi Qing Luo tried to shake it off but failed, her expression turned solemn. "Bridegroom, please conduct yourself with dignity. You, listen to my explanation." He spoke in a low and hoarse voice, word by word, with difficulty. Yi Qing Luo's brows creased even tighter as a trace of puzzlement and solemnity surfaced in her eyes. "Bridegroom, what do you mean by this? You and I don't know each other at all. If you do this, will you be able to face the Lord of the Devil Palace?" "Little Luo, he called out in a low voice. That familiar voice that made one's heart tremble, calling out Dmo Xian's exclusive title. Yi Qing Luo's heart was still moved. However, on the surface, he frowned even tighter. "Groom, I think you have recognized the wrong person. How could I be mistaken?" The groom's voice was hoarse and full of pain. Give me a chance to explain. Before he could finish, Ichio's hand suddenly reached over and pushed the groom's hand away. The bridegroom's eyes immediately shot out a sharp, cold glint toward Ichio. Ichio casually pulled Yiqing Luo to his side as he nonchalantly pulled the corners of his lips. Overlord, Miss Mu already said that she doesn't know you. Isn't it a little too much for you to keep pestering her? Don't forget, you're the new husband of today's wedding ceremony. Ichio deliberately emphasized on the last 3 words. Is it your turn to speak? The groom's voice was deep and cold as he reached out to grab Yiqing Luo's arm again. This lord is talking to her. What has it got to do with you? This lord said that she is this lord's future princess consort, you say. This lord has nothing to do with this lord. Ichio moved forward and blocked the groom's outstretched hand. He laughed so much that he deserved a spanking. 7th Miss who likes trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. 7th Miss who likes trash, Overlord, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5098. The peerless groom's expression turned darker and gloomier. His eyes that were as cold as ink stared at Yiqing Luo. What he said. Is it true? Whether what King Yi said is true or false has nothing to do with you. Yiqing Luo was too lazy to explain. If she explained, didn't it mean that she cared about the other party's opinion? She didn't want the other party to have such a misconception. The girl's face was cold, and there was not much emotion on her face. Even the look in her eyes did not change in the slightest. Groom, today is your big day. You are not afraid of getting into trouble, but I don't want to get into trouble for no reason. Earlier Lord Demonic Palace had already made it very clear that she doesn't want us to have too much relationship. Earlier, I will take it that you've recognized the wrong person. Please conduct yourself with dignity. The young lady's voice was soft, but the words that came out were like a sharp blade, cutting off a deep ravine. The groom seemed to have lost all his strength, even that pair of obsidian black eyes had lost its luster at this moment. He lowered his head and said in a low voice, I know, you're angry because of my marriage with her, but you should believe me. He suddenly raised his head and stared deeply at Yiqing Luo. You should believe me. Groom, what are you talking about? Yiqing Luo vividly acted out her confusion, helplessness, impatience and anger. Why should I be angry because of your marriage? Why should I believe you? She frowned. If you've recognized the wrong person, then your actions are letting down Lord Demonic Palace. Saying that, she turned around and left. Not willing to stay for a moment. Ichio raised his eyebrows and looked at the groom with some interest in his eyes. Then he chased after Yiqing Luo. The two of them had only taken a few steps. A man's mellow and hoarse voice was heard from behind, full of emotions. He said, I'm sorry. But the person in front had no intention of stopping. Vaguely, she could hear Ichio teasing, "Io, Miss Mu is not bad. I didn't expect you and the Overlord to have a past. Go over my ass. I don't even know who he is. Who knows if that bridegroom is sick in the head." The young girl's tone was full of impatience. But I feel that he seems very sincere, Ichio said. Hee. The young girl coldly snorted, pulling another woman on your wedding day. You're simply a scum among men. How sincere could such a person be? Bah, the voice gradually grew distant. The expression on the man's face, which was filled with disappointment, gradually calmed down. His ink-like deep eyes stared straight in the direction where the girl had left. That peerless face was covered with a layer of dark and gloomy emotion. Until he was far away from the cluster of flowers. He was sure that the groom had not caught up. Yiqing Luo sneered as she glanced at Ichio. This is the good idea you came up with. So, the person in the dark is today's groom. Ichio's face was full of seriousness. This is not my deduction wrong, but Miss Mu, you are too popular, even today's groom, fell in love with you at first sight. Yi Qing Luo. If this sentence is heard by others, I'm afraid I won't be able to leave the wedding ceremony alive today. Yi Jiu's smile was bright, his extremely devilish face was handsome and evil. Once again, he approached her and smiled, this time, it won't be wrong. Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Trash 7th young mistress, Lord Dizun, please be gentler with your love. Chapter 5099. Yi Qing Luo had yet to understand the meaning of Yi Jiu's words. Yi Jiu tightened his grip on her wrist. Then, he leaned towards Wing 9. Yi Qing Luo. Motherf asterisk Ker. Was he trying to take advantage of her? Yi Qing Luo gave him a backhand slap. This slap didn't even reach Wing 9's face. A majestic profound energy brushed past her and shot straight ahead. Bang! Wing 9 was sent flying. A moon-white long robe flashed past Yi Qing Luo's eyes and fell heavily on the rain. The next moment, Yi Qing Luo's wrist tightened. Suddenly, a cold sensation came into contact with him. Her whole body was pulled backwards. The familiar plum fragrance entered his nose. Yi Qing Luo was able to differentiate who the person who was pulling her was. She frowned and turned to look at the person behind her. He was dressed in a simple yet luxurious red robe, and a blood-colored jade pendant hung from his waist. It was as if there were wisps of blood rippling within the jade. His black hair was combed neatly, revealing his grave and stern face. His face was expressionless, devoid of any emotion. But that pair of serene eyes, when looking at Yi Qing Luo, revealed some gentleness. It was Zhu Wuxin. Why was he here? No matter how she felt, it didn't matter what realm she was in. He could even meet Zhu Wuxin. Most importantly, her current identity was Mu Yu, so how did Zhu Wuxin recognize her? Yi Qing Luo straightened her face and said with a sunken face, "Master, please let go." Her tone was calm, but there was a hint of vigilance in it. It was like meeting Zhu Wuxin for the first time. When that soft voice rang out, Zhu Wuxin frowned for a moment. However, the emotions on his face did not linger for long. It was fleeting. Yi Qing Luo struggled free from Zhu Wuxian's hand as she retreated 2 steps in alarm as her brows creased slightly. "Who are you? Why did you suddenly attack King Yi?" The unfamiliarity in her eyes caused Zhu Wuxin to frown again. The gaze he shot towards Yi Qing Luo was filled with probing. Apparently, Zhu Wuxian wasn't certain that she was Yi Qing Luo. This man was so sharp that it was scary. She had already disguised herself to this extent. He had disguised himself like this. Zhu Wuxin was actually able to recognize her. This was truly frightening. Yi Qing Luo walked step by step towards Yi Wang's direction, as she looked at Zhu Wuxian alertly. Wing 9, who was lying on the ground, supported himself with one hand and slowly straightened his body. The moon-white robe swept across the ground, staining the flower petals on the ground. That head of silver hair, sprinkled on the beautiful purple and red jing. This added to his soul-stirring demonic charm. He stood up absent-mindedly and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his slender fingers. Tilting his head, he raised his eyes to look at Zhu Wuxin and indifferently said, "He's the pavilion master of the Red Clarity Pavilion, Zhu Wuxin. You don't know him?" These words were to explain Zhu Wuxian's identity to Yi Qing Luo and also to ask her. Yi Qing Luo shook her head, "I don't know." Pausing for a moment, he asked again, "Are you 2 enemies? Why did he attack you the moment he arrived?" Wing 9 squinted that pair of cold phoenix eyes meaningfully as he gave an evil smile. "Why do I feel that, Pavilion Master Chu? Attacked me because of you. Because of me." Yi Qing Luo frowned as her face was filled with puzzlement. Wing Nine's vision went back and forth between the two of them as he spoke in a teasing tone. Miss Moo. Looks like you really have many secrets on you which makes one want to investigate. Chapter 5100. That gaze which seemed as though he had seen his prey made Yi Qing Luo frown in displeasure. Yi Jiu slowly shifted his gaze onto Zhu Wu Axian as he gave an evil smile. Pavilion Master Chu, could it be that you've also taken a fancy to Miss Moo? What did he mean by, you too? Yi Qing Luo really wanted to smash Yi Jiu's head. As though she was the one who attracted bees and butterflies everywhere. Zhu Wu Axian didn't answer Yi Jiu's question as his gaze fell onto Yi Qing Luo as his deep gaze probed her identity. But his words were directed at Yi Jiu. What's the relationship between Yi Jiu and her? Yi Jiu pondered seriously for a moment before giving an answer. Consider it as this lord wants her to be this lord's future princess consort, this kind of relationship. Yi Qing Luo. Zhu Wu Axian's gaze turned slightly cold. His thin lips moved slightly as he spoke calmly. Then, you won't have this chance. Why? Yi Jiu raised his brows with a smile yet not a smile. Could it be that Pavilion Master Chu also wants Miss Moo to become your future pavilion mistress? Zhu Wu Axian had no intention to reply. He stared at Yi Qing Luo as his voice was calm. You really don't know me. That gaze seemed to have seen through Yi Qing Luo's disguise. Yi Qing Luo's heart thumped. But her face maintained a sense of unfamiliarity and vigilance with some puzzlement. She said, Pavilion Master Chu. You and I have never met before today and I've never heard of your name, so how would you talk about knowing each other? Zhu Wu Axian's pupils contracted slightly as he turned around and left without saying a word. Yi Qing Luo. So, did he believe her or not? TSK TSK TSK. Yi Jiu propped his chin as he sized Yi Qing Luo up curiously. Miss Moo, you're really popular. First there's the Overlord, and now there's Hong Qing Pavilion's Pavilion Master. Just be direct, who else has fallen under your skirt? Yi Qing Luo. She felt that she was on the verge of falling off the horse. But before there was any evidence, she would never admit it. Yi Jiu saw Yi Qing Luo ignoring him and walked over to her side. Why? You're still counting how many love rivals this king has? Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes at him and couldn't be bothered to reply to his teasing words. She asked directly, so? The person who had been staring at me from the start and attacking me with various gazes, was this Pavilion Master Chu? It's obvious. Wing Nine spread his arms and smiled lazily. Yi Qing Luo chuckled. How do you know that you can use this method to lure him out? Because this king is a man. Wing Nine smiled mysteriously. Well, this king's method is still very successful. Two lovers are drawn out in one go. Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes once again as she didn't want to bother with him anymore. Most importantly, she also did not know how to explain the strange attitude of the groom and Zhu Wuxin towards her. Yi Qing Luo couldn't be bothered with him as she directly walked towards the wedding ceremony. Wing Nine caught up to him. Do you still want to go back and watch your old Qing marry another woman? Madam is still there. Yi Qing Luo replied and added another sentence very seriously. That's not some old Qing Ren. Yi Wang, please be careful with your words. She had just returned to the wedding ceremony. Yi Qing Luo saw Madame Huang Xi, who was surrounded by numerous people. A group of people were pulling her along as they chatted, as though their relationship was extremely good. Madame Huang Xi tried to leave several times but was stopped. She heaved a sigh of relief when she saw Yi Qing Luo returning. Chapter 5101. Fortunately, Sunset Rain was safe and sound. Yi Qing Luo frowned slightly when she saw the crowd surrounding Madame Huang Xi. She squeezed into the crowd and with a protective stance, she pulled Madame Huang Xiai behind her. I'm sorry everyone, please keep the air fresh. She protected Madame Huang Xiai. Her delicate face was clear and her voice was soft as she explained, I am Fu Rao's accompanying doctor. Fu Rao is not feeling well and should not drink. She casually picked up a glass of wine beside her and raised it to the crowd. Thank you for your hospitality. After that, she drank it in one gulp. Her lips curled up and she smiled sweetly. The crowd didn't make things difficult for her. They had heard that Demon Phoenix Continent's Fu Rao had a problem with his health. But they didn't expect that it had reached the point where he needed an accompanying doctor. Their original intention was to keep Madame Huang Xiai at the wedding venue. Now, Madame Huang Xiai had no intention to leave. The crowd said a few words of concern and dispersed. Yiqing Luo helped Madame Huang Xiai back to her seat. If you don't want to entertain, you can reject. Madame Huang Xiai sized up Yiqing Luo. Are you all right? Where did Yi Wang bring you? Did he do anything to you? No. Yiqing Luo smiled and shook her head in relief. He's just saying it casually, but he's still a gentleman and won't really do anything to me. So, in Miss Mu's heart, this lord's image is so high. E9's sloppy voice came from behind. E9 swayed his outstanding figure and swayed in front of Yiqing Luo, with a devilish smile. He turned around gracefully and brushed past Yiqing Luo's eyes as he sat sideways on the chair beside her. After that, he put one hand on the back of the chair behind her shoulder. His posture was full of intimacy. But, how can Miss Mu be sure that this lord is just saying it casually and not sincere? The fragrance of green bamboo lingered around. Yiqing Luo raised her head expressionlessly and looked at E9, because, Yi Wang doesn't like me. If he doesn't like you, why would this lord let you be my future princess? E9 laughed. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand and clasped Yizhou's wrist, then slowly moved his hand away from his back. Until his breath was far away from her. Yiqing Luo then calmly opened her mouth. You will have to ask King Yi what motive do you have? After putting some distance between her and Yizhou, she casually leaned against the back of the chair. She raised her long and narrow eyes and looked at Yizhou with a faint smile. King Yi, my eyes don't lie. She raised a white and slender hand and brushed Yizhou's eyes through the air. When you look at me with those eyes of yours, I don't feel any affection at all. The smile on Wing Nine's face gradually froze. His deep eyes were fixated on the young girl. After a long time, he suddenly laughed. Miss Mu, no matter what kind of feelings this prince has for you, if this prince wants to marry you, then this prince is serious. Ha! Yiqing Luo gave a light chuckle. I have a husband who loves me, so why would Duke Yi feel that I would abandon a man who loves me deeply, and choose a man like you? Whose feelings for me are unclear. Yiqing Luo propped up her chin. So, King Yi, if you want to get something from me, or if you have other motives, I advise you to give up. Because, I am something that you will never be able to, father. Cough, of course our Luo, can't do that. Chapter 5102. Fairy. That's right. This baby is a fairy, this fairy. Yiqing Luo's expression didn't change as she said the last two words. Yizhou was stunned at first, but when he realized the meaning of Yiqing Luo's words, he gave a charming smile. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about him, but turned her head to talk to Madame Huang Xiai. Madame Huang Xiai didn't know what happened between the two of them outside, but she could tell that the relationship between the two had become slightly closer. She was a little worried. But in the end, there was nothing. After confirming that the groom wasn't Dmo Xian, Yiqing Luo had no intention to crash the wedding. So, the wedding went smoothly. But, Yiqing Luo felt that this wedding shouldn't end like this. From the groom's appearance to when he led the demon palace to the ceremonial stage, she was slightly stunned. Until the toast, the demon palace's words and the groom's expression. Until the end when he looked for her, with a face full of guilt, as if he was hiding endless difficulties. She could almost conclude. This bridegroom was probably here for her. No, to be more precise, he was here for Yi Qing Luo. The person behind the groom was probably already suspicious of her current identity. So he deliberately used the groom to provoke her. If she showed a trace of being moved by the groom, or make a move to crash the wedding, to snatch the bride, that was to directly strip her of her disguise. The person behind the scenes, was it the demon palace or someone else? Most importantly, how did the other party know that she was Yi Qing Luo? But the groom's probing. She should have performed well. After all, she knew that the groom wasn't Dmo Xian. The only fluctuation in her heart. Probably seeing Dmo Xian's handsome appearance in the wedding robe. After all, the other party was wearing Dmo Xian's face. If the real purpose of this wedding was just to draw her out, then this wedding, it would never progress so smoothly. Yi Qing Luo was in her mind, connecting all the things together. She was still thinking. Suddenly, there was a sound coming from the ceremonial stage. Following that, she heard someone shouting, "Overlord." Yi Qing Luo regained her senses from the calculations in her mind. Just as he looked over. Then, she saw a man dressed in a red wedding robe, striding in her direction. It was extremely fast. Everywhere it passed, a shapeless profound ripple was formed, and it pushed all the people that were in its way to the side. The red wedding robe was like a ripple spreading out. Yi Qing Luo. What the hell, what kind of situation was this? What was he trying to do by walking towards her? Yi Qing Luo subconsciously wanted to stand up to avoid the groom's attack. Before he could move. The groom was already standing in front of Yi Qing Luo as he stretched out his hand and grabbed her wrist. This lord will not marry her. He stared at Yi Qing Luo word by word, as though it was difficult and filled with suffering. Even that low and hoarse voice had a tinge of bitterness in it. I'm not marrying her anymore. Don't deny me, okay? Yi Qing Luo, what the hell was going on? What did the bridegroom mean? Yi Qing Luo wanted to struggle free from the groom's hand. But the groom held it even tighter. I know I'm wrong. Overlord, what do you mean by this? Just as everyone was stunned by this scene, the demon palace started her performance. Her cold and elegant face was filled with anger. Chapter 5103. Following that, he dragged his phoenix coronet and robe as he walked over in big strides. This angry shout. It also shocked the crowd. Instantly, the guests who came to watch the ceremony looked towards the groom and Yi Qing Luo as they started to discuss. Madame Huang Xi was stunned by this scene. She immediately stood up and stretched out her hand to push away the groom's hand which was holding Yi Qing Luo's. Before she got near, the groom waved his sleeves and a surge of boundless profound energy pushed her to one side. He raised his eyes that were as deep as the abyss and stared at Madame Huang Xi with a frosty gaze. On account of her, I will forgive your rudeness. You have no right to speak here. Madame Huang Xi staggered a few steps from the push and only managed to stabilize herself by holding on to the table. Following that, the groom turned his head to look at Yi Qing Luo and the expression on his face instantly changed. That pair of inky black eyes seemed to be filled with tenderness. Overlord. Under the crowd's discussion, the young lady's voice wasn't loud but it was clearly transmitted into everyone's ears. Yi Qing Luo totally couldn't guess what this impostor was trying to do. She could only maintain her persona as her face was filled with anger and impatience. What on earth are you trying to do? I regret it. The groom suppressed his voice as he spoke in an apologetic tone. I shouldn't make such a choice. What has your regret got to do with me? Yiqing Luo looked at the devil hall, which was getting nearer and nearer as she spoke even faster. Overlord, you and I don't know each other. If you regret, or if you should do anything, that's between you and the devil hall. She paused and continued, if it's because you don't want to get married to demonic hall and regret at the last minute, so you casually captured me in an attempt to end this wedding, then forgive me for not being able to help. It's a fact that you're getting married to demonic hall and there's no leeway to regret. Most importantly, I'm a married woman. When the young lady said the last 4 words, her narrow eyes rose. I can't let anyone spoil my reputation and let others misunderstand that there's some unclear relationship between us. So, Overlord, please find someone else. I'm not getting married. The groom stubbornly repeated. His grip on Yiqing Luo's wrist increased in strength. That pair of deep black eyes were also filled with determination. Come with me, I will explain everything to you. Yiqing Luo was in so much pain that her brows creased tightly and her forehead wrinkled. At this moment, Yi Jiu suddenly pressed on the groom's hand and directly pried his hand open, saving Yiqing Luo. He looked sloppily at the groom's deep eyes and sneered, Lord Dizun, don't you understand? Whether you get married or not has nothing to do with Lady Mu. The groom's gaze turned cold, and it was as if a sharp blade was cutting Yi Jiu's skin. Yi Jiu remained unmoved. Instead, he laughed heartily. A dignified overlord, in order to escape from a marriage, you smeared the name of a girl you don't even know. Have you ever thought that you've successfully escaped from the marriage? Then, what will happen to Miss Mu? Wing King. The groom enunciated each word coldly. This is between me and her. It has nothing to do with you. There's no other way. Who asked this lord to pursue her? Yi Jiu spread out his hands and shrugged. Didn't you see Miss Mu's face was filled with rejection? As a qualified pursuer who wants to marry Miss Mu, naturally I have to help her, lest her reputation is ruined by you. Chapter 5104. Scram. The groom's thin lips moved as he spat out an icy cold word. Yi Jiu stood in front of Yiqing Luo. Just as he was about to open his mouth, he saw the young lady walking past him as she looked at the groom calmly. Overlord, your actions are really shameful. Have you recognized the wrong person, or are you just casually trying to catch a lady and coincidentally caught me? Even if I'm really the person you're looking for. I also want to tell you that you're really disgusting. The young lady's voice was still that soft. But the words she spat out. Her mouth was vicious. Moreover, it was extremely arrogant. The surrounding crowd sucked in a breath of cold air. This young lady actually scolded the overlord. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but scold. She even activated her ridicule mode. She scoffed lightly as her vision fell onto the demon palace and returned back to the groom. Since you've chosen to marry the demon palace lord, then reneging on the wedding ceremony. Your way of doing things is really heartless. This makes me have no choice but to make a conjecture as a conspiracy theory. Based on the rumored ability of the overlord, if he wanted to escape from the wedding quietly, there's actually no problem at all. But you purposely did it with such great fanfare. What's your intention? Yiqing Luo's brows rose as a cold arc flashed past the corner of her eyes. Let me make a bold guess, the overlord is provoking the internal strife between the demon phoenix continent and the demon palace. After Yiqing Luo said this, the crowd who were originally discussing about Yiqing Luo instantly shifted their focus. Because what Yiqing Luo said indeed made sense. If the overlord wanted to escape from the wedding, there was no need for him to renege halfway through the wedding ceremony before reneging on it. And even announced it to everyone with such great fanfare. The reason why he reneged on it was because of the accompanying doctor from the demon Phoenix continent. No one would believe it no matter who he gave it to. The groom probably didn't expect Yi Qing Luo to be able to change the direction of the wind in just a few words. His pitch-black eyes which stared at Yi Qing Luo contracted slightly. Although it was very slight. But Yi Qing Luo who had been staring at the groom saw it clearly. Yi Qing Luo didn't bother about the groom's intention, but looked towards the Devil Hall as the cold intent on her face slowly retracted. "Sir Devil Hall, I'm so sorry. I can assure you that I have no interest in the person whom you're getting married to today." The Demon Hall had originally come here to put on a show. But he didn't even have time to say a single line. But because of Yi Qing Luo's interference, she didn't know whether to be angry or not. Without waiting for the Devil Palace to speak, the groom took another step closer to Yi Qing Luo. However, Wing Nine quickly intercepted him. The groom stared at Yi Qing Luo, enunciating every single word with a chilly glint in his eyes. "Who exactly are you?" This question made Yi Qing Luo laugh. "You don't even know who I am, but you keep pestering me in private. Don't you think it's funny?" She laughed mockingly. "Overlord, your method is really lame." The groom clenched his fists tightly as his fingertips turned white, as his eyes seemed to be gathering boundless turbulent waves. "Miss Mu, are you sure? You and my husband have no relationship?" The Demon Hall frowned as he stared at Yi Qing Luo coldly. Yi Qing Luo smiled. "I'm a married woman, what relationship can I have with him? To tell the truth, this is the first time I'm seeing him here." The Demon Hall's eyes were filled with suspicion. "You keep saying that you're a married woman, but I've never seen your husband before." Chapter 5105. I suspect that you don't have any husband at all. The cold expression on the Devil Lord's face turned chilly. "Moreover, I heard that you came all the way to Devil Head City to attend my wedding. Your motive is to snatch the bride, to snatch my husband, the Overlord. Am I right?" When the last two words left her mouth, the Devil Lord raised his hand and clapped. Very quickly, there were two Devil Lord's guards, one on the left and one on the right, walking over. That person was Madame Huang Xi's previous personal maid, Hai Lan. Hai Lan was covered with injuries and her face was pale. When she saw the Devil Lord, she shrank back in fear. The Devil Lord's cold eyes looked at Hai Lan as he sneered. "Now, tell everyone what you heard in the Madame's residence." When she saw Hai Lan coming out, Yi Qing Luo was completely sure. The reason why she almost fell off the horse. It was probably because of the two words "bride snatching" which spread to the Devil Lord's ears, which aroused suspicion. This was obviously. This Devil Lord and that fake Overlord knew about it. The woman beside Dmo Xian was Yi Qing Luo. That was why he tried to test her, to find out if she was Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's expression remained unchanged as she calmly raised her slender brows. I'm not, don't be blind." Hai Lan's eyes widened. "The entire Madame's residence can testify that you came to Devil Head City to snatch the bride." Yi Qing Luo smiled and asked in reply, "Since I want to snatch the bride, why must everyone know about it? Are you afraid that the Devil Lord doesn't know that someone is going to snatch the bride? Moreover, if I spread the news that I'm going to Devil Head City to snatch the Overlord, even a maid like you knows about it, then wouldn't Madame know about it? If Madame knew about it and still brought me to Devil Head City, you mean Madame has the intention to disrupt the Devil Lord and Overlord Great Rao's marriage ceremony? Is this what you mean?" Harlan's face turned pale as she questioned him word by word. No one had expected Yi Qing Luo to directly deny it. She even covered the entire pot. If this matter were to nod, then it wasn't just Yi Qing Luo alone who was suspected of snatching the bride. But it had risen to the height of the three devil continents and the Devil Lord. And, most importantly, If the Devil Hall were to forcefully push this responsibility onto Huang Sifu Rao, the Devil Hall would not be able to deal with him. It would definitely cause a backlash from the other two continents and other forces. After all, from Yi Qing Luo's interrogation, the situation had already changed. Madame Huang Xi was not a fool. How could he have known that his accompanying physician would stir up trouble on such an important occasion and even bring him here? If Fu Rao's accompanying doctor really wanted to kidnap the bride, he would definitely die. Huang Sifu took on the heavy responsibility. Most importantly, this was the wedding ceremony of the Lord of the Devil Hall and Dizun. How could a mere physician kidnap the bride? What a joke. Everyone would start to suspect, was the Demon Hall trying to find an excuse to attack the Devil Continent? Thus, he rebounded completely. Hence, the Demon Hall could not acknowledge it. Yi Qing Luo's counter-question was reasonable and reasonable. No. You really went to Devil Head City to kidnap the bride. Your husband is Lord Dizun. You want to snatch your husband from Lord Devil Hall? Harlan shouted in disbelief. Her eyes widened as her face was filled with panic. She heard the whispers around her and the way they looked at her, as well as the peach-robed black-haired young lady in front of her, looking down at her from above. Chapter 5106. The defense in Hai Lan's heart completely collapsed. She turned towards the direction of the demonic palace and screamed in panic, "Lord Demonic Palace, please believe me, I am absolutely not lying. It's her," she said it herself, "she wants to snatch the bride." I don't dare to lie to you." But there wasn't any emotion on the demonic palace's cold face. Her face was cold as she stared at Hai Lan for a long time. Finally, her voice was icy cold as she spoke in a dignified tone, "Whether it's true or false, I will decide." Her gaze flickered. The demonic guards understood as they carried Hai Lan up from both sides and dragged her down. Harlan naturally understood what would be waiting for her if she continued to drag this out. She kept crying and begging for mercy. Her voice slowly disappeared from the wedding ceremony. The crowd's discussion quietened down. For a moment, the atmosphere was stiff. The demonic palace held the groom's arm as she looked at Yi Qing Luo coldly. A pair of icy cold eyes carried a few sharp blades. "I wonder if Dr. Mu has heard of this saying." Yi Qing Luo's lips curled. "Please speak." "There's no smoke without fire." She glanced sideways at the expressionless groom who was staring at Yi Qing Luo with a burning gaze. "If it wasn't for the fact that you really don't covet the overlord, why would there be such news? Most importantly," she paused slightly. Her tone suddenly turned sharp, "the overlord seems to treat you differently." Yi Qing Luo's expression remained unchanged. "If he has the intention to frame me, there's no smoke without fire. As for why the groom is like this, I'm also very curious." She smiled slightly as she was very calm. "Before today, the groom and I have indeed not met before, so for this answer, I'm afraid Lord Demonic Palace has to ask the people around you." The Demonic Palace's exquisite brows creased slightly. There were some subtle changes on his expression. Suddenly, a sharp voice was heard from the crowd. "Look at your vixen look, you only know how to seduce men at night. Who knows if you're taking the opportunity when Lord Demonic Palace isn't paying attention to give the overlord a flirtatious look." Following that, Jiang Shuang, who was dressed in a jade-green long dress, rushed out in big strides. "What do you mean you're a married woman? Call your husband out if you have the ability. I still want to ask him personally. Does he know that you've been seducing people outside?" Jiang Shuanger's sharp words and stern countenance made the heavy atmosphere a little more turbulent. Yi Qing Luo looked at Jiang Shuanger in surprise. Who would have thought that this woman would appear at this critical juncture? He was really stupid. Yi Qing Luo gave a light laugh as she replied, "Jiang Shuang, or his words calmly, "I'm afraid." The minute my husband stands out, Big Sister Jiang's heart would be stirred and she would secretly send flirtatious glances towards my husband, so in order to protect him, I can only hide him. Then, she gently stroked her cheeks with her slender fingers and said with a sweet smile, "Does Big Sister Jiang mean that I'm good-looking? I also think that I'm very good-looking. However, Big Sister Jiang, you don't have to feel inferior. Even if you're ugly, with Big Sister Jiang's identity, you won't have to worry about no one marrying you." The girl's voice was soft and gentle, and her tone was very calm. But every single word that came out of her mouth was pricked right into Jiang Shuanger's heart. You. Jiang Shuanger was so angry that her face turned pale as she gritted her teeth and stared at her angrily. "You're obviously feeling guilty. How could a normal married woman possibly be so ostentatious outside?" Chapter 5107. As Jiang Shuanger spoke, her gaze shifted to Wing 9. "You keep saying that you're already a married woman, but you're the former Venerable Arch, the latter King Hooked Wing. You are a vixen. Who didn't know?" The Demon Wing Continent's Wing King hated women the most. On top of that, his face was extremely bewitching. Very few women could surpass his peerless beauty. Because of this, there were rumors going around. The Demon Wing Continent's Wing King was a homosexual. This was probably the first time Zhong Rong saw the Wing King being so intimate with a woman, right? Moreover, Yi Wang had even stretched out his hand to hold the young girl's wrist. Now that Jiang Shuanger mentioned it, everyone's gazes towards Yi Qing Luo were filled with different emotions. Let's not talk about whether or not this girl seduced the overlord behind the Devil Hall's back. It was this young lady who kept saying that she was already a married woman, but she didn't know how to distance herself from Yi Wang. This was enough. That was enough for everyone to despise him. It was no wonder that the Lord of the Demonic Hall would suspect her. Seeing that the surrounding guests were all standing on his side, Jiang Shuanger straightened her back proudly. "What? Is it because you have no way to defend yourself? I'm just too lazy to talk to you, wasting my saliva." Yi Qing Luo glanced at her indifferently, her eyes filled with indifference. It was as if he did not take Jiang Shuanger seriously at all. So in the demon domain, women are supposed to stay at home and take care of their husbands and children. Then, does this mean that after the Devil Hall and the groom get married, they should also hand over all the power of the Devil Hall to the groom? Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up as she retorted with a smile. Jiang Shuanger didn't expect Yi Qing Luo to be so direct and wanted to refute. "Don't explain." Yi Qing Luo impolitely interrupted her. "What you said earlier revealed the meaning of this point." Yi Qing Luo spoke very quickly and in an imposing manner, absolutely suppressing Jiang Shuanger. "Although I'm a married woman, but that doesn't mean that I must stay by my husband's side. Furthermore, King Yi only looks up to me because of Fu Rao. Why did it become so unbearable in your mouth? I've heard a saying before. What a person sees is what he or she sees. You're dirty, so everything you see is dirty." Yi Qing Luo's explanation was so calm and composed. She was so calm that many people saw Wing 9 grab her wrist. They all felt that it was just an accident. When Yi Jiu heard this sentence, his thin lips curled upwards in a smile which didn't look like a smile, as he looked towards Yi Qing Luo. But ultimately he didn't expose Yi Qing Luo at this moment. Or to emphasize that Yi Qing Luo was his future princess etc. Jiang Shuanger didn't know how to refute. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she glanced at Devil Hall and smiled. "Or Devil Hall also feel that after you and the groom get married, it will turn into internal affairs and you only need to revolve around this husband of yours? The Demon Palace. Of course not. The Devil Domain could allow Madame Huang Xi, the Devil Hall, and other similar women to wield power and become the ruler of a continent, or an existence that could keep the balance. Naturally, he acknowledged the woman's strength. Compared to the outside world, the demon region cared more about strength. The strong were respected. As long as one was strong enough, no matter if you were male or female, young or old, everyone would be willing to submit. Even if the woman got married, it wouldn't affect her own status. Yi-Ching Luo's rhetorical question. It really made one unable to answer. Chapter 5108. The cold expression of the demon sovereign was incomparably gloomy. A pair of sharp and sinister eyes glared at Jiang Shuang'er. He gritted his teeth, this idiot. Jiang Shuang'er, who was being cut by the demon palace's malicious gaze, was so frightened that she couldn't stop trembling. He wanted to cry but had no tears. She clearly wanted to use this opportunity to curry favor with the demon hall and incite a conflict between the demon hall and that slut. This way, he could kill two birds with one stone. Not only could he gain the favor of the demonic palace, but he could also take the opportunity to get rid of that slut. But now, he had outsmarted himself. The demonic palace bore a grudge against her. At this moment, the atmosphere at the wedding ceremony was extremely strange. The guests did not know whether to leave or stay. No one spoke up to smooth things over. What a joke, at this critical juncture, who would dare to speak? This was a big wedding day, and the groom was going to regret it. The person who had their marriage annulled was the lord of the demon palace, who had the highest status in the demon domain. It was Di Zun who broke off the engagement in public. Di Zun had even grabbed a girl in public. He had broken off the engagement because of the girl. But the girl had explained it clearly. No matter how one looked at it, it seemed like Di Zun didn't want to marry the lord of the demonic palace, so he used her as cannon fodder. But now, even if they were cannon fodder, Di Zun pulled. This young lady would not be able to escape from being implicated. While everyone was lost in their thoughts, Devil Hall's red lips moved slightly as her eyes turned gloomy and cold as she stared at Yi-Ching Luo and slowly opened her mouth. Dr. Mu need not confuse the public and change the topic. I don't care about what Big Sister Jiang said. She clasped the groom's arm tightly as her vision wandered between the groom and Yi-Ching Luo, speaking in an icy cold tone. This highness only wants to know, this highness's groom, this highness's husband. Why would he embarrass this highness in public because of you? You have to ask him about that. Yi-Ching Luo replied innocently. In any case, he would carry out the, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know anything, to the end. The demon hall pushed the groom. You. The bridegroom's elegant face was expressionless as that pair of surging black eyes stared deeply at Yi-Ching Luo. He said nothing. The pressure on his body was also extremely low. Those who were close to him found it difficult to even breathe. However, under the deep and burning gaze of the bridegroom, the girl hooked her pink lips without the slightest pressure, crossed her arms over her chest, and smiled calmly. Is the groom still racking his brains to come up with an excuse? I want to see your husband. That man who maintained the low pressure and remained silent, opened his mouth after Yi-Ching Luo's words ended. Immediately, the demon hall's expression became even uglier. He remained silent at her question. Instead, he answered the girl's questions at any time. The bridegroom had no intention of giving her face at all. Yi-Ching Luo scoffed lightly. From the looks of it, it seems that if I don't prove that I have a husband today, you guys aren't going to let me off. Meet her husband. This was because he was suspicious of her identity and was certain that Dmo Xian would not appear here, hence he made such a request. Or was it because he was certain that she didn't have a husband? However, one thing was certain. It didn't matter if the demonic hall suspected her identity or if they were testing her. The other party did not intend to let her leave this place alive. Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes squinted unknowingly. Suddenly, a slight sound rang out in the silence of the wedding ceremony, where only the sound of breathing could be heard. That was the sound made by the chair rubbing against the ground. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.